Well, hello and good morning from the Indian Ocean. It is our third day in the deep. We're at a new site today. We are 135 meters down. That is 443 feet. Today, though, we're not just on a voyage of exploration. We're on a mission to learn more about where we are, what is down here, and what is happening to the ocean. Well, our cameras are primed on this submersible, ready to show you around, revealing the life which makes this place so special.
And we're up above on the ship with a couple of scientists who know that deep very well indeed and who know their stuff. They've already found some amazing things while they've been here, and they're ready, I hope, to answer your questions.
And I'm on Aldabra Atoll. The reef that Anna is exploring is behind me, but I'm on the beach. I'll be looking for sea turtles, giant tortoises, and a flip-flop or two.
And I'm joining the Deep Ocean Live team today, live from our London studio, Sky HQ. And I've got some school children with me from up and down the country. I've got some really pressing questions for our team in the Seychelles about climate change, biodiversity, and of course, sharks. Yeah, and I think that one's for you, Anna, because you've seen so many there where you are. We're starting to call you the shark whisperer here at Sky.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to bed dreaming about them, I have to say, Sarah Jane. Lovely to see all the children there. Absolutely brilliant. So our mission today is to give you a never-before-seen view of this unexplored, untouched part of the Indian Ocean. Where we are right now is on a rocky outcrop. It is a cliff face that builds up to Aldabra Atoll, such an enormous atoll in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Debris is falling on us right now. You can see a bit in front of the camera there. It is rotting seagrass coming out of the lagoon at Aldabra. It's famous for this enormous lagoon. You could easily fit Manhattan Island into that lagoon, and parts of that are dropping on us right now. Well, here to help guide you through our journey is my pilot, the aquanaut, Randy Holt. Lovely to see you here, the pilot then of this submersible. It's been a fascinating couple of days. Thank you so much for taking us underwater, showing us your world. Each dive is different and fascinating. But what are you hoping to see today as we explore this rocky outcrop?
Well, as you said, there's a lot of outcroppings here, lots of caves. I'm seeing some sea fans here, and we're just going to see what creatures come check us out.
They're already starting to, aren't they? Lots of questions, I know, already coming in for you, Randy, which we'll get to a little bit later. But before we get to those questions that we've had from you and the children in our studio, let's just remind you where we are, because we are extremely remote. So we've joined the scientists from the Nekton mission in the Seychelles for a deep-sea exploration of the Indian Ocean, the least explored yet the most threatened of the world's oceans. We're diving off Aldabra, an idyllic atoll nearly 700 miles southwest of the main Seychelles island of Mahé. We're actually closer to Africa, 400 miles off the east coast and around 270 miles northwest of Madagascar. Well, the oceans are an entirely fluid environment. It seems like an obvious thing to say, doesn't it? But it's a 3D environment. We're being moved around all the time. And as we move around, there are key measurements that Randy here has to do. First of all, obviously, the depth. That has a really big implication of... Oh, hello. I'm just going to see if I can show you that camera. He's just come a bit further over, Fish.
We can pivot around.
We pivot. Come down a bit. He's trying to investigate us, isn't it? So our depth then...
There he is.
Can you see him? Oh, just his tail. There we are. He's coming to see us. 443 feet, I can see. 444 as we moved there. 444 feet, 135 metres. The pressure measured in pounds per square inch is 203, and the temperature is 20 degrees, but it feels a lot hotter, I have to say, in this sphere. We've turned the air conditioning down so you can hear us a little bit better. Just remind you that you can get in touch. We still want to hear some of your questions. Do get in touch using the hashtag #DeepOceanLive. We are ready to listen to them. Broadcasting obviously on Sky News, Sky Atlantic. It's also on YouTube, Facebook as well, so watch us live there. Mark, I know you were prone last night to tell me that you had been a little bit deeper than me, a bit of ribbing from you, so lovely for me to be down here again and you to be on the surface.
Yeah, and it's lovely to see such a great picture as well, but I was, I think, a small matter of about 110 metres deeper, but I didn't last as long as you've already lasted, so there we are. But anyway, we're working with a great team of scientists from the Nekton mission here, as I say, on the ship. Two of them are with me right here, Lucy Woodall and Rowena Walton. Tell the children what you do and say hi.
Hi everyone back in London. My name is Dr. Lucy Woodall. I'm a Senior Research Fellow at the University of Oxford and I'm Chief Scientist on this expedition. So my job is to make sure all the science happens and to make sure we're collecting all the amazing information that we're surveying here.
Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Rowena Walton. I am a fellow with the University of Seychelles and I'm here part of the science team looking at the hard corals and particularly looking at the shallows in comparison with the deep.
So they can answer really, really complicated questions, so make them really hard. Sarah Jane, back to you. Let's get these questions going.
Oh, don't worry, Mark. We've got some hard questions for you and the team. School children here from 4 schools up and down the UK. They've got questions for Mark, Anna, who's down in that submersible, our science correspondent Thomas Moore, and all the scientists out there in the Seychelles as well. I can see Mark just behind camera looking a little bit nervous as I said that. The questions are quite difficult. Let's introduce the schools. It's important to point out that 1.4 million children took part in climate change debates and walkouts last week. This is the generation that really cares, so important to have their questions here this morning. First up, let's introduce the children from Featherstone High School in West London. We are joined by 12 and 13-year-olds from Newbattle High School in Dalkeith in Scotland. They are also here from Prince's May Primary School in East London. And last, but by no means least, from the Boulder Academy, just down the road from Sky Studios here in London. Good morning. I mean, it's early, it's early. Right, let's also have a chat with Emily Penn, who's our Sky Oceans ambassador. Morning, Emily. Good to have you with us. You're here to fill in any blanks that we might have here this morning, as well as our team out there in the Seychelles. Why is this Deep Ocean Live project so important?
It's really about taking people down to these undiscovered, unknown parts of our planet to find out what's going on. We know so little about the deep ocean. We know more now about the surface. I've actually been studying plastic on the surface the last 10 years, but there's this huge gap in our knowledge. We know there's all this plastic going into the ocean, but we're not finding it all up there. So the question is, where is it? Is it sinking to the deep? And that's exactly what Deep Ocean Live is all about finding out.
Yeah, we'll be finding out much more about it throughout the morning. Emily, thank you. I'll let you take a seat. The children are primed and ready to put their questions to the team. And we don't want the presenters out there in the Seychelles and those submersibles to have all the fun. We're going to have a bit of fun ourselves here in the Sky Studios this morning. We've got a mic with a bit of a difference. Here we go. This is the catch box. Oh, yes, I dropped it quite a few times in rehearsals. Children have been doing much better. Let's get our first question from the floor. We've got Shakira. Shakira, stand up and hands up because you've got a question for the team. Here we go.
Can you describe the ocean in 3 words and why?
Okay, Shakira, great question.
That question's for Anna. Anna, can you hear us?
How do you know Anna actually given? Yes, I can now. Sorry, we lost you momentarily. I think that, as I said, I've gone to bed every night actually having shark flashbacks that actually I'm going to say scary, surprising. And if I look down there, I would say foreboding. That's my answer. I would give you a different answer if we were more shallow. Randy?
I'd describe the ocean probably as deep, blue, and life. Our life cycle depends on the ocean. So.
Nice answer. What about Mark, back on the ship? Mark?
I'd describe it as very, very big. Go.
I would probably say life support system.
Very scientific.
And connect the planet.
Ah, there we are. Okay. What about Thomas?
Well, I would say it's vast. I would say it's moody too. You never know what it's going to do. And I think also it's so important to our planet. It's the life support.
OK, Thomas, Mark and Anna, thank you very much. Let's go to the next question. This is Nabila. Shakira, if you throw it to Nabila. Oh, these girls are good at netball. Right, Nabila, you're up. What's your question?
What percentage of the coral have we destroyed?
What percentage of coral has been destroyed? Well, unfortunately, quite a lot. It does regrow, though, I think, but I think we'll defer to the scientists on this one. Lucy, first of all, what percentage of coral has been destroyed, and does it regrow?
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to hand this to Rowanna, because she's our coral expert.
Down the food chain we go.
Absolutely, yes.
So unfortunately, like you said, Mark, it is quite a lot. It's been about 30% over the last 50 years. And they predict that we might lose another 30% over the next 30 years. So unfortunately, we are losing our coral reefs at quite a fast rate. So the most important thing is that we research them, we understand them, and we try and find a way to protect them better.
And just very briefly, why are they so important, these reefs?
The reefs that provide, like I said before, a life support system, okay? So they are connected to all of our ecosystems on land as well, and they support fisheries worldwide. So obviously, we all eat fish, and in some countries that is more important as a protein source than others, and our coral reefs support all of these fisheries as well.
Okay, and Thomas, over on the island there, he's seen a lot of coral. Thomas, what's your view?
Well, certainly, if you see the reef here, it is extremely healthy. That it has suffered bleaching in the past, but it has recovered very well. Now, one of the possible reasons is this is the centre of an enormous marine protected area. There's no commercial fishing here, so you see an awful lot of fish, and they graze on the algae that would otherwise smother the coral when it's having a tough time. There's an awful lot of apex predators out there. Apex predators, what are they? Well, sharks to you and me, groupers too, but mainly the sharks. And there's a story here. Now, you two, this is Jessica and Alicia. These are the bones from a humpback whale that washed into the enormous lagoon in the middle. Jessica, what happened to those humpback whales?
A year ago, like, they breached in one of the channel we have on Aldabra, and we got 2 female and a calf that got stuck, and we try our best to help them to get back to the water, but it was unfortunate that all 3 of them passed away. And
they did attract, though, some sharks, and we've got video of those sharks. What were those sharks? What were they doing?
They were feeding on the remains of the whale, and we had tiger shark and bull shark too, and yeah. And
Alicia, that was quite a feeding frenzy, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were a huge number of sharks, and the whales would have been a huge food source and nutrient boom for other animals in the area.
So there's no wasted opportunity, and that's one of the reasons that you've got such abundant marine life around here, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
When you go swimming in the waters here, you dive and so on, it is quite extraordinary just how vibrant the life is. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you don't see tiger sharks or bull sharks when you dive, but you do see a lot of other things. Fantastic. Thanks very much, both of you. So, back to you, Mark.
To speak to Anna clearly, but we've lost communication. I know what that feels like. So SJ, Sarah Jane back there in London, let's get the next question.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mark. There you go, Nabila. You got an answer about coral. Got some sharks in there as well, because we love sharks, don't we? So there you go. You got 2 answers to your question. Let's look for Connor. Connor's got the next question. Hands up, Connor. Perfect. Connor, what's your question? You've got word of the day, actually. This is a nice long one for this hour of the morning.
Have you seen any bioluminescent creatures in the zone, and how do they create their own light?
I have seen some bioluminescent creatures in the dark. It's kind of like when we're driving and there's these little sparkles of light that come across the sphere of the sub as we move. And they create that light basically when we stimulate them. And down deeper, it's a totally another thing.
It's such an amazing thing, isn't it? Because in the deep, with no light, animals must have special adaptations to find food, to avoid predators, to find a mate, and bioluminescence does just that. Sometimes they can actually depth charge light to avoid predators and confuse them. It's an extraordinary thing. And in fact, what we've noticed as we come down here, while we're on the subject of light, is that you lose the colour red really quickly. So without this light on, I'm actually in a sort of sludgy purple colour, even though I'm clearly wearing a pink top. So the whole light question is really interesting, Sarah Jane.
Anna, thank you. Connor, thank you for that question. Connor from New Battle High. We've got Nabia next. Nabia, stand up. Connor, your turn to throw. Nobody's dropped it yet. And Nabia hasn't let us down. Nabia, what's your question for the team out in the Seychelles?
Does plastic affect life down in the Twilight Zone?
That's a really interesting question, because that's always been the concern, hasn't it? That it's microplastics that are beginning to fall down and enter the food chain down here. We're moving around, so you'll probably hear Randy doing a bit of ballast manipulation. I say that, I don't know.
I'm putting some ballast there in the tanks and running thrusters right now.
And what about you? Have you seen plastic? You've done so much more of this diving than I have.
I've dove a lot of coastal areas and a lot of oceans, and yes, sometimes we do see large nets. They're called ghost nets, fishing nets that have been snagged and left behind, or lines and other marine debris. But fortunately, it's been pretty clear down at depth here.
Yes, although we do have like marine snow falling. I don't know if you can slightly see it. I mean, some of this is the sediment from the lagoon, but this is also some of the plankton, zooplankton, plant plankton. It's absolutely crucial for life down here. And some of the coral that we see is, if we point it out up here, as you stay on us, and all of that is feeding on plankton, so it's really important, Sarah Jane.
And thank you, Nabia. Great question. So the plastic does affect the Twilight Zone, but what about a beach level? Because when we go to the beach, we can actually see the plastic. We can't see it down in the Twilight Zone, but we can see it on our beaches. And where Thomas is around 700 miles from human habitation, yet our plastic pollution still gets there. Thomas, what have you found on the beach this morning?
Well, it's quite extraordinary, the amount of plastic that is being cleaned up here. All these bags were taken off a small stretch, 50-metre stretch of beach yesterday by volunteers for Aldabra cleanup. That's a group of people, partly from Seychelles Islands Foundation, but also from the Queen's College, Oxford. They've got together because they are so concerned what's happening in this pristine wilderness. It is really a victim of geography, just in the wrong place, that all the ocean currents bring this plastic, hundreds, thousands of miles, and it causes all kinds of problems on the beaches here, not just for the tortoises, but also for the turtles, which have to make their nests. And I saw a turtle crawling out of a nest the other day, and that was causing huge problems.
Thomas, thank you very much. Well, for a bit more about the plastic pollution and how it affects our oceans, Emily Penn, Sky Ocean Ambassador, is with us. Emily, it's really interesting. We've got Anna down in the deep, Thomas up on land, and it seems it doesn't matter where you are when it comes to the ocean, plastic has infiltrated everywhere.
Absolutely. The fact that our ocean covers 70% of our planet, it really, as Lucy, the scientist, said, it connects us all. Yeah. And so that plastic, wherever it begins, whether it's here in London or whether it's even in a remote part of the world, eventually it gets into the ocean and then it moves around our planet. It moves to these gyres, these accumulation zones, and that's where we expect a huge amount of it is sinking.
Yeah, I've got a newfound hatred for flip-flops. I never really liked them, and I'm going to make a vow never to wear them again. So many of them being washed up on the beach that we can see. Let's go back to Nabia's question, because that was really interesting. Remind us what it was, Nabia, because I know Emily's got a view on this.
Is plastic affecting life in the Twilight Zone?
That's the thing, we can't see it, and it's not like a flip-flop, it's much smaller than that, but it's still there.
It is. And what we're finding is happening at the surface is that plankton is growing on the plastic and barnacles and things like that, and that's what actually makes it then heavy and it starts sinking. So I'm sort of not surprised that down there they can't physically see it, because it's probably disguised. So until Nekton can actually take some samples, bring them back to the lab to study them, then we should know more.
Okay. OK, Emily, thank you, and Nabia as well. It's really interesting. Deep Ocean Live, we've been doing it for the last couple of the days, and one of the most horrifying images I've spotted from the team out there is a flip-flop with marine life growing on it. That's what they found washed up on the beach. Some quite shocking scenes, Anna, up on the beach. Not so bad where you are, but it's still there. Doesn't mean that it's not visible to the naked eye, that it's not affecting marine life there.
Absolutely. Let's just show you where we are. You can really sense the rocky outcrop. Look how steep that is. It's a cliff wall building up to where Thomas is on the beach up there. It's really been quite an incredible furthest flung corner of the Seychelles archipelago, 115 islands in total. We are by far one of the remotest Aldabra atoll, and from being on the atoll itself, the land that time forgot, it felt totally prehistoric. To here in the submersible, I'm lucky enough to have had a few dives now with Randy, and I have to say, for me, part of the best bits are the journey themselves, from diving, when you say dive, having got the clearance from topside, when the whole sub tips forward like that and you go down into the blue. And I expected to see fish straight away. Nothing, just blue all the way down until 70 meters or so down we arrived at a sandy bottom, and the first time we did it we had dancing fish all around us. It was absolutely amazing. And then bit of pressure there, and then Randy gets permission from the top to go even from topside to go deeper, and here we are in this deep corner. You see these sorts of caves. This is where the fish try to find shelter from the predators that are all around them. Little sea urchins we can see, sometimes anemones, sometimes sea fans, those corals we were talking about. It's absolutely beautiful down here. And then the other part for me that's really extraordinary is coming to the surface, but I think we're going to come on to that a little bit later in another question. But all of this is so otherworldly, it's hard to describe. Is there any chance we can get up to this wire and whip coral up here? We might be going too high. You might lose us, but anyway, there's plenty of people to speak to if you do. Look at these fronds of coral you'll begin to see. Just remember, these are animals, and that's what's so extraordinary. They look like little bits of white seagrass, but these things are, you'll gradually get to them. There's another beautiful bit of sea fan we're passing there, but you're going to get this white. We've got current. We're going to have to drop down quite quickly, but we'll show you and then we'll go down again. There you go. You see a bit of white in the top right-hand corner of your picture. That is a living animal, everybody. And its tentacles are out, it can't retract them, it's trying to eat plankton, tiny little sea urchin right by it as well. And for me, that there's living creatures down here. They love this place because we're right on a rocky outcrop. We're on a rocky outcrop here, and so they love it here. They're getting all the current that is coming up. But we have seen so many creatures, it's been wonderful to see them all. So let's show you some of the pictures from the deep. it really is an extraordinary environment. And just to remind you, nobody has seen this before. I'm going to show you again the wall we're on. We're investigating the nooks and crannies down here. Nobody has been down here. Most of the time, scuba divers here, and they're not even allowed to scuba dive along this part of the coast, only allowed to go to about 20 metres. Well, it's varying at the moment, but we're just under 135 metres down right now. This has literally been seen by nobody, so nobody knew what creatures were here. It is a real privilege, certainly, to have seen above land and beneath, Sarah Jane.
Yeah, Anna, looking at all those dark nooks and crannies, we wonder what's going to pop out. Stay on Shark Watch for us, Anna. We've also got some more questions for you as well. Randy, the pilot, as well. What's his job? He's called an aquanaut. Yeah. When I grow up, I want to be an aquanaut as well. Right, let's have a look at some more questions. Nabia, on your feet, because you're going to have to hand over the mic to Dylan now for a new battle. Hi, who's got a question for Mark Austin and his scientists? Excellent.
Where it gets dark at depth, how does vegetation still grow without the light of the sun?
That's a very good question. First of all, just a quick one on bioluminescence. I was at 250 metres yesterday, and I'm sure I saw a lanternfish, a bioluminescent fish. It turned out to be the headlights of the submarine. So there are disappointments down there as well. But this is a very good question. Where it gets dark, you know, at depth, how does vegetation grow? It's a good idea, because a good question. There's very little sunlight down there.
There is, that's right. So on the surface of the water, we've got some corals, we've got algae and seagrass, and that all uses the light, photosynthesizes. The coral have got little tiny algae inside, and they photosynthesize and help the coral get energy. So that's how everything gets energy on near the surface. However, as we go down, the amount of light and also the type of light changes. So what we do is the animals that live deeper down change from the light-feeding organisms down to things that feed off other organisms. So all that marine snow we saw on the way down, that is tiny bits of animals that have been floating down in the water column, and the animals that live down there are filter feeders, so they'll pick up things in their tentacles in the water, or maybe along the seabed, and they'll be feeding in the sediment, and that's how they survive.
Okay, and you want to say something about plastic very briefly?
Yeah, I think it's just really important for us all to understand that plastic is a challenge because we can see it, but there's lots of stuff in our water that we can't see, and there needs to be research that goes on right now to figure out, you know, we've got some plastics that we know about, and we know certainly with like maybe ghost fishing gear the impacts of that, but lots of things we still don't know. So I think it's really important for us to remember there's lots of unseen dangers out there, and a really great way for us all to connect with the oceans is those plastic objects we're using every day. There's a whole heap of other chemicals we use in our lives that we don't have any idea about their impacts.
Okay, point well made. Let's go back to SJ. Many more questions to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, many more questions. While Mark is doing the science part, we've got Anna on Shark Watch. We've got Thomas Moore on the beach on Tortoise Watch, and I think he's found one.
Yes, I have indeed. Aren't they amazing? There are 150,000 giant tortoises on Aldabra, and we've got two of them here, sheltering from the heat of the sun. I'm going all David Attenborough on you. They are very docile creatures, quite magnificent. There's something very Jurassic about them. They look like walking, living dinosaurs, and they are quite incredible. They just flop down at night and fall asleep exactly where they are. But they are very at risk from all the plastic that is washing up from the ocean. And just to make the point, we've got some tortoise poo here. Kelsey, just tell us about it.
So basically we found this right on the beach near where they're feeding areas, and when we look through it, because they don't have a very efficient digestive system, things just go through, and you can see bits of plastic that have gone through, and presumably flip-flops, and which shows that they are eating the flip-flops.
You can see actually more inside there, just to make the point. We haven't staged this at all. This really is poo with plastic inside it, and that can't have been very pleasant for the tortoise at all.
No, they shouldn't be ingesting it at all. It should not be here.
But Craig, I mean, wherever you go on Aldabra, you can see tortoises, and they are quite attracted to plastic, particularly the flip-flops, it seems.
They really are. So the team that I was with, we went down to one of the remotest parts of the atoll in the southeast, and there are just so many tortoises, you lose count, and lots of tortoise grazing areas just inundated with plastics, particularly flip-flops, all over the place.
Fantastic, Craig. Thank you very much indeed. So, Sarah Jane, we found some tortoises for you. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Thomas. That tortoise looking very sleepy there in the midday sun out in the Seychelles. But we're wide awake here in the studio. We've got some more questions for the team out in the Seychelles. We had a brilliant one from Dylan a moment ago. Dylan, you're now handing over to Joel, who's from Featherston High. He's got a question for Mark Austin and the scientists.
Given their importance, why aren't there more marine reserves?
Well, that is a very good question, and a very good question addressed to a place like this, where something like 15% of the sea is a marine reserve, and as we were hearing earlier, it might be 30% soon. Rowena, why aren't there more marine reserves?
Well, I think if we take the Seychelles context here, we can see in the recent extension of the marine protected areas that it's really hard. There are so many people who are using the ocean for a variety of different uses, and to try and get them all to agree to bring in measures can be really hard. So it's a long process and an important one, but with all these competing uses, we have to find a way to use that resource sustainably. That's the key, I think. Lucy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point, right? You know, we're sitting here now, it's a beautiful conservation area, but actually, you know, there is a lot of people in their lives and their food security depends on the ocean. So we can't just say we can't take anything out. We need to do that in a sustainable manner. This does take a lot of consultation, because it only works if you've got buy-in from everyone who uses that area, but it also takes political will. So something we can help to do as scientists is provide information of what's out there and what areas can be used sustainably and what is that sustainable use. But also trying to understand areas that actually they are so unique and so important that really as humans we shouldn't touch them, and we should be looking at other areas that maybe might regenerate a little quicker.
Yeah, well there we are. It is a sensitive subject, of course, because fishermen have their livelihoods and they have to make a living.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much. Now, we all decided pretty early on that when we grow up now, we want to be aquanauts. Randy is piloting Anna below the ocean this morning. They are sitting there having a great time. They're exploring new things down there. We've got some quick-fire questions for you. Let's go to... Joel just asked the last question, so Joel now has to hand to Lucy from New Battle High, who's got a question for Randy.
How long at one time are you submerged?
Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
It really depends on the mission that we're on. If we do a long dive where we're motoring a lot, exploring a lot, using a lot of thrusters, it might only be 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes we do longer, like 5 or 6. But if we got stuck down here, we could stay underwater in the sub for 4 days waiting for rescue.
Thank you for that, Randy. OK, Lucy, we're handing over to Abaid now for the next question.
How much preparation have you undergone for this mission?
Did you hear that one?
Is that for us?
He's concentrating on piloting this thing. How much preparation have you undergone for this mission?
Quite a bit. There's been a lot of equipment from a lot of different people around the world that we've put together on the sub. The science package that we've installed is not typical for this vehicle. So that's water sampling, that's all kinds of camera equipment and devices for measuring the things we see.
Exactly. And also you take a lot of samples, don't you? So that's another bit of equipment. You've had to build a tray at the front of the submersible to try and take those samples, which are very carefully regulated what you can take.
Yeah, that's correct. We have a collection basket that's taken a little bit of art to get it to work right. But yeah, we can collect samples from certain depths based on what the scientists determine is useful, and we'll collect those and bring them up to the lab.
Well, Randy is battling a deep-sea current, which is why he's slightly distracted. He's operating that submersible, keeping them safe. Let's have our next question from Jessica from New Battle High. Jessica, hands up.
Do you have to decompress after diving?
No, we don't have to decompress. Submarines are 1 atmosphere. What that means is we have the same pressure in here as you do in your classroom. Once we shut the hatch, we keep our life support systems running good, but we don't feel the pressure change in the water column like a scuba diver would.
Well, although you do a sort of pop thing, don't you? So you get the surface. It's sort of champagne scent. You get covered in bubbles. As you come nearer the surface, they become like this jellyfish, and then next thing it's sort of walking up and down.
Okay, well that was that deep ocean current I was talking about. Not only is Randy having to navigate through that, but it's also interfering with our communications as well. So while we get Randy to get the submersible out of that current, we'll go back to Mark, who's with our science panel. Mark, it's quite interesting, lots of questions about what's happening with that submersible, but also we've got lots of questions here about ocean pollution. You've actually got some questions from school children out there in the Seychelles who are also concerned about what's happening to the planet around them.
Yeah, of course they are. And yes, we've got some questions from school children in the Seychelles on the island of Praslin. And they're very good questions as well. Here is the first one. They've made little videos for us.
My question is, what kind of species have you found in your adventure on the water?
So that was, how many kinds of species have you found in our adventures underwater? Lucy.
Yeah, well, actually, the answer right now is we don't know, because we've still got to analyse all of these data that we're collecting. And that's a really important thing for us to be doing over the next 12 to 18 months. But I can say right now, it'll be hundreds. We've got all sorts of things. We've got our corals and our seagrass and our sponges, all the big stuff, but also we've got all the tiny little zooplankton that we've been collecting in the nets. So I'll be able to give you a proper answer in about 18 months' time. So if we can come back here, that would be great. Until then, I think I'll say about a few hundred.
Okay, a few hundred. Let's get the next question and the next video from a school child in the Seychelles.
My question is, how are we preventing harm to Aldabra from any future threats as they arise?
Well, that's a very good question. How are we preventing harm to Aldabra from any threats that arise? And man has been trying to prevent harm to Aldabra for a very long time, since, well, Charles Darwin and other scientists back in 1874 wrote a letter saying this place should be protected. How are we protecting this place?
Well, the Seychelles Islands Foundation, who manage Aldabra, working alongside the Seychelles government and many other partners in Seychelles, are working really hard all of the time to identify those threats and manage them as they arise. So it could be invasive species, it could be climate change, it could be coral bleaching. 365 days of the year they're doing research and they're trying to understand Aldabra a bit better so they can instigate the right management actions. So definitely there's a lot of work going on to both identify those threats and find the best way to manage them.
Yeah, and the Seychelles government, interestingly, has been getting people to pay off part of the national debt and in return making more and more of the Seychelles a protected area. Leonardo DiCaprio, the famous actor, is one of those guys who has paid the Seychelles government to do that. Let's get another question.
Mark, thank you very much. This next question is for Anna in the sub. Hopefully we can speak to her with re-established comms. Let's get a question from Ramsha, who's from Prince's May. Here we go, another throw. Nailing the throwing this morning and catching. Well done, guys.
If you could speak to sea creatures, what would you ask?
Oh, you know, what I would ask is, do you feel fear? Because this is all about predator and prey from what I've seen here. It's all about trying to avoid being eaten. You know, as I said earlier, the little caves that we're seeing right now, I'll show you some of them, they're all hiding in there, some of these little creatures. And we know, especially around here, the black-tip reef sharks, they come out at night, they're nocturnal feeders. And what they need to do is use their senses, and like the sense of smell, and they sense electromagnetic movements as well. Oh, should we see if we can get, you can see the tail of this little fish. He's back again. Hello, I'm going to wave to him.
Looking at us, not the camera.
So really, it's very interesting that actually a lot of the life of these sea creatures is trying to avoid being eaten. So do you feel fear? What about you? Your question.
My question to the sea creatures. I would just probably
You didn't
ask...
see that, you should do it again.
I know, it's all right. I'd probably ask them, you know, what they think of us being down here.
Yes. And there is a sense of reverse aquarium, isn't there, actually? It's really interesting because they actually come right close to us. We had a potato grouper the other day that stayed with us while we ascended for about 200 feet. It stayed with us, and in fact you were talking to it, I seem to remember, Randy, weren't you?
Yeah, it came right up to the sphere and was actually almost like it was kissing the acrylic.
So we are aliens in their world, and they come to say hello. It's been absolutely fascinating. I don't know if they've got an answer there in the surface to that question.
Anna, thank you very much.
I think we would...
A lot of those fish looking very bemused. I think Mark's got a question, got an answer to that question. Mark, if you could speak to sea creatures, what would you ask them?
I think I'd ask them what they think of Anna Botting disturbing their kip this morning, but they are amazing pictures. I mean, astonishing pictures, and you've just got to keep pinching yourself that it's, you know, this has never been done before, and also that 94% of life on this planet, any life on this planet, 94% exists under where we are now in the ocean. So what's your answer to the question? If you could speak to a sea creature, what would you say?
Oh, I'm going to have way more than one, but I guess I'm just limited to one today. I think I would ask them about their behaviour, so who they hang out with, where they go. These are the sorts of things that we don't know. Yeah, who their friends are, you know, where they go. Because we're only down there for such a short snapshot of time. We can only see them for that period of time. So it'd be really cool to say, hey, you know, where do you go? We sometimes have information from tags, which gives us longer term data, but for the smaller creatures, that's not possible. So that's what I would ask.
Okay, Rowana.
Well, that would be a dream come true if I could speak to sea creatures, so I hope that might happen. And if I could, I'd probably ask them, how could we make your lives better? I think, you know, we have so many impacts on our ocean, so I'd probably want to ask them, what can we do for you? How can we make things better for you?
Oh dear, I'm emotional here. So those are our answers. Let's have another question.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the fish would say cut out single-use plastic. That's probably what they'd say. Ella is here with us, and Ella is one of the presenters of FYI, the children's programme here on Sky News every weekend. Hello, Ella. You've got a question.
Yeah, from what you've discovered, what would your message be to children around the world?
Who is that to? Oh, is it to me?
Good question.
Well, part of the reason that Sky Ocean Rescue decided to focus on plastic was that because we can all contribute more, certainly. We can all decide not to use plastic straws, we can all use a reusable bottle. So I think if we think about taking baby steps to a bigger goal, I think that's always a great philosophy in life. So let's all take more baby steps. If at home you're watching this and you decide to walk to work and perhaps turn the heating down a bit, then we're all doing as much as we can at that point. We can always build to doing more. And I think really, actually, that this marine environment is so special, it is so amazing that we all deserve to do a better job for it. And certainly the evidence of that is on Aldabra Atoll, as Thomas Moore is finding out so starkly.
Wash up on Aldabra Atoll. There is no great human settlement here. These are coming hundreds, if not thousands of miles, brought here on the ocean currents. There are 2 billion people living around the Indian Ocean. Clearly this is cheap footwear. It's what people wear in hot countries, but sadly these countries do not have good waste management. So these flip-flops leak out into the ocean, and of course they are buoyant. They float on the surface, and that's why so many end up here. In fact, there are so many that I found it quite easy to find a pair for myself just to wear on the beach while we've been making this programme. But I'm joined by 2 people who've been trying to clean up the mess that we as human beings are leaving. Craig, you've been doing an awful lot of work on the south coast of Aldabra, which is prime turtle nesting territory.
That's correct. So there have been 12 of us who've been deployed down to the south, various camps, and we've just been tackling this issue. We've just been trying to get as much marine debris of turtle nesting beaches and tortoise grazing areas areas as possible. Already we've done just over 20 tons. We're pushing for more over the next week and a half. But there's a lot of stuff. This is not even representative. This is a drop in the ocean of what we've been doing down south.
Yeah, I mean, you see an awful lot of fishing litter here. You're seeing cigarette lighters, but flip-flops do take up quite a lot of the overall weight. You're hoping to clean up something like 50, 60,000 flip-flops.
That's correct, yeah. There are so many flip-flops down there. One of the things that we do here is that take your own pair of flip-flops back. There are so many. So, yeah, there are so many flip-flops.
Josie, I mean, you're concerned. Well, you had a good example of what else these flip-flops might bring. Just show us.
So, because these things are floating on the ocean, you can end up with marine life latching onto it where they start off, and then it can float here, and that can sort of bring invasive species here that can cause a lot of problems.
So these are invasive species. I know there's an awful lot of concern about a sponge, a marine sponge. There's come all the way from Guam and the Pacific to here.
I mean, I hadn't heard, that's terrifying to hear, but it makes a lot of sense. I mean, like, when you sail around here, you can see things bobbing in the ocean. And SIF here have an amazing biosecurity protocol. They check our shoes, they fumigate everything, but they can't stop. You know, we've, thousands and thousands and thousands of flip-flops that are bringing these things across the ocean. So it's scary.
Yeah, it's a real message there, something to really take home and do something about. So let's just react to this, and back to you, Sarah Jane.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it, Thomas? I mean, we've all lost a flip-flop in the sea, and you think, oh, I've lost my flip-flop, I'll buy another pair. But that's where it ends up. Really disturbing scenes. I think the most disturbing statistic for me today is that every year the amount of plastic that goes into the ocean is the equivalent weight of the human population on this planet. That's absolutely incredible. But there you go, flip-flops washing up there, which is 700 miles from human habitation. The effects of plastic pollution really do reach far and wide. We're going to have another question now for Anna down there in a submersible with Randy. This question is from Jennifer from New Battle High. Here we go.
What's the weirdest type of species you've found underwater?
You mean apart from those wire and whip corals we showed you, which are actually alive and they look like they're a bit of vegetation, don't they? The weirdest ones I think some of the scientists have seen have to be the sunfish. It was about 2 meters big. Louise saw it up, she's on the ship right now, at 200 meters, and I think they're the weirdest thing because they sort of swim around like this. The potato grouper who follows it up to the surface and actually wanted to show he was intelligent life form with us.
Some of the weirdest things I've seen are things that don't look like anything you've seen before. These jellies that glow and they form these colonies, and they might be the size of I don't know, a garden hose or something like that, but they're all little small organisms.
Wow, absolutely amazing. I mean, it's wonderful to see all of this, and Mark went even deeper, obviously, as you continue to remind me, to 257 meters. I don't know what you saw down there that tickled you.
Yeah, 113 meters deeper than you at the moment. The thing that actually struck me, I didn't see many weird fish, but I saw something that I felt was very weird, and I'm sure the scientists would say, no, it's normal. But we were just going up to a rock, and suddenly a lobster came out. What looked very much like a lobster just came out of a tiny little sort of cave thing, a sort of crack in the thing. Out came the lobster, had a look at us and went back in, and I just thought, what's a lobster doing down here at 250 metres? Is that a normal place to find lobsters?
Oh yes, that's where they hang out.
It's not
that's
weird
where
at
they
all.
make their home. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because when we talk about weird things, they're things that are different to us, and as we're air breathers and we live on the surface of the water, most stuff looks weird to us down there. Of course, it's just evolved to live in that way and have that special shape and live in a certain way because it's underwater. So, I don't know, when I think of weirdest things, I think of things like the anglerfish. They're pretty cool because they've got their own lure. So they've got this little thing that comes off the top of their head. It's often lit up, and this helps attract prey to them. That's pretty neat. It's pretty weird. We don't run around with little lures on our heads, getting things that come into our mouths. That's pretty neat.
Roanna?
Yeah, I think also similar to what Lucy said, I think it's when my favourite thing underwater is when animals camouflage themselves to look exactly the same as the host they're living on. So you might have a crab living on a soft coral fan, and it's evolved over time to look exactly the same. That, to me, it's not maybe weird, but I think it's so clever and so unique that those organisms have evolved like that.
All right, well, we've got another question, I think, coming now for you two on plastic. Let's go back to Sarah Jane and get the next question.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. The weird and wonderful world of the deep ocean. We know more about the moon than we do where Anna Botting and Randy are right now. Let's have a question from Krupa, who's from Featherstone High. Jennifer, if you want to throw over to Krupa.
How many years would it take to remove all the rubbish from the ocean?
Oh, that is a good question.
OK, how many years would it take to remove all the rubbish on the ocean? I'm going to guess and say, well, you couldn't do it. I don't know what... let's ask Lucy and then Rowanna.
Yeah, so actually you're right. We can't remove all the rubbish that's been put into the ocean. That's just not possible. Some of it is still on the surface of the water, but the majority is fragmented and down at the bottom. So rather than concentrating on the removal, we need to concentrate on stopping the tap and stop it getting into the ocean. That's going to be the most success for us.
And most of the plastic is tiny, tiny beads that have sunk to the bottom anyway,
yeah,
in the seabed and in the coral.
That's right, yeah, a lot of it's on the seabed, so we just can't remove it.
Yeah.
That's where it is.
Amazing pictures. Rana, what's your view on removing rubbish?
Yeah, exactly the same as Lucy, really, is that prevention. It's all about prevention now. Large-scale removal will be ineffective probably at this point. And as you said, quite rightly, obviously microplastics is so much more of an issue now. That's in our food chain, so that's much more of an issue. So it's more about now stopping that flow of plastics into the ocean.
Yeah, so it's for the next generation to start looking after the ocean better than we did, maybe. Back to you, SJ.
Yeah, Mark, it's really interesting. I mentioned earlier, over 1 million children across the globe demonstrated about climate change last week. So this is the generation that really cares and they want to do something about it. Emily Penn, Sky Ocean Ambassador, is still with us. And Emily, it's interesting hearing there from the scientists that we will never get all the plastic out of the ocean, but what we can do is stop putting more in there.
Exactly. Even if we were successful with getting it out, if it's still going in 8 million tonnes every year, then we're never going to solve the problem. So it does all lie in prevention and thinking mostly about our own personal consumption of plastic. And we need to pass on plastic. We need to eliminate that single-use plastic from our lives so it doesn't end up on that little island in Aldabra or on the bottom of the ocean.
Top tip on what everyone watching at home can do, because a lot of people go, oh, well, what I do won't make a difference. But if everybody makes that little bit of effort in their everyday lives, we can.
Absolutely. Plastic bags, plastic bottles, coffee cups, those are all the place to start. We think that it's just one bottle, but it's these micro actions that really add up.
OK, micro actions, that is the call to action. Emily, thank you. Final question from Dawn, and this is for Anna down in the submersible. Here we go, heads up.
What is the process for naming new life if discovered in the Twilight Zone? And do you bring it to the surface for further study?
Goodness me, I don't know. I don't think there is yet a Mark Austin lobster, but I'm sure he'll be fighting for that, as well as the deepest person ever to be in this part of the Indian Ocean, certainly. But certainly one of Lucy's colleagues at Nekton has 3 things named after him. Professor Alex Rogers. They're very interesting animals, certainly. But would you like something named after you?
I'd love to have something named after me. I don't care what it is.
It's been an absolutely fascinating experience being down here, I have to say. It's wonderful to hear the questions there from the school children. It's interesting the types of questions you're asking as we show you the view into the gloom, if you like. What has been the most interesting for me is that this is a world that is totally unexplored, that literally nobody knew what was down here off Aldabra. Nobody even knew the shape of the coastline. We've been able to show with the Nekton scientists how the slope shelves off so steeply, as we can show you there. It is extremely foreboding. You look down and it's a sea of brown inky colour, and you literally don't know what's down there. The fish are around us, they're trying to come and say hello. There's still life down here. It's critical life as well, because the big question is this a refuge if the seas get warmer? Can the corals down here survive? Can some of them move into cooler water down here? 20 degrees certainly down here. And Aldabra Atoll itself, it is a world unlike any other. There are frigate birds flying over that look like pterosaurs. There are giant reptiles walking along, and it is extraordinary to see the two things together amongst the best protected part of the world. As Randy here tries to keep us in position, we're swinging around in the currents because we've come right up to the rocky outcrop. We are now facing the deep. Let me show you what we can see. There you go. That is the deep ocean, everybody. But that is what you're fighting for. There are fish out there who need the shallows. They need the shallows for juveniles to feed, to prey, and it's absolutely crucial. Deep ocean life has been an extraordinary experience for me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. From the deep, goodbye. It's an extraordinary place to be, I have to say.
It's amazing. I just can't believe that we're seeing you and hearing you like this.
I broadcast from some pretty remote and amazing places in my time, but none quite so remote or amazing as this.
Off the coast of this amazing island behind us here called Aldabra, what they call the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean, after the famous island of great biodiversity in the Pacific Island. It really is the most wonderful place, and I mean, if you were watching in the last hour, we really have the most wonderful hour of television from the deep, where Anna was in the submersible, and from the island just across here, and I can see actually where Thomas Moore, our science correspondent, was talking to you from, and from scientists here on the ship. But most of all, the stars of the show were the school children back there, who were asking really, really interesting questions, which were, some of them were great fun, and others actually almost floored the scientists here. They were so good. I hope and pray that we can still see and hear Anna down there, because Anna, I've got to say, that was a wonderful job you did down there, and Randy, well done. The pictures were amazing. I mean, just amazing to show school children images like that, life like that they will probably never see for themselves, which is the great shame in this, but they will see on television, and you did that. You brought them to us, and thank you very much. And I mean, you know, just carry on the way you were going. I mean, it was so fantastic. Show us some more of those wonderful pictures down there.
I think we're going that way at the moment, because the current's taking us that way. We are fighting to stay in line with our communication system, which is right above us at the moment. But if you lose us, it's because we're right at the top of this rocky outcrop. I can't quite show you, because if we do, we'd probably, what would happen? We'd shoot it right out, would we?
Yeah, we might just drift away from the
just go warm
depressor,
like that. So we're taking shelter behind this wall. If we swing round one way or the other, I'm not sure, we can sort of show you how steep it is, but above us there's literally an overhang, and it's giving us the shelter, which is exactly what we need to stay in one location. It's quite difficult, and certainly Randy throughout that hour has been fighting our location. Quite tricky for you, actually.
It's a bit tricky, yeah. There's the currents here have been really unpredictable every single day, and even within the hour we've been down here, it changes from going up the wall to down the wall to up the wall. Yes. So it's hard.
Yes, and certainly we tried to do all this science work on the south of Aldabra, and actually we sent down the remote camera. It couldn't get past about 30 meters, could it? So it's very difficult. What depth are we now? Can you see?
420 feet. That's about 135 meters.
About 135 meters. So we've been hovering around this area, trying to see as much as we can see. But I know, Sarah Jane, you've still got school children with you, and perhaps they've still got a few more questions for me, or even better, for Randy.
Yeah, trust me, Anna, they've been glued to the screens and they're in no rush to leave and go to school, let me tell you that. How much did we enjoy that last hour? Yeah, we enjoyed that very much. Hands up, who wants to tell me about their favourite bits or has got a question for the guys below? OK, here we go. Ready? Yes, we haven't dropped one yet.
My name's Kieran Jar, and I would like to ask you, what would be your future mission?
Oh, Randy, that sounds like it's for you, our aquanaut.
A future mission?
A good future mission. I love diving on shipwrecks as well, so you know that's always exciting for me. And just going to new places like this. This is somewhere where nobody has gone before, so it's really exciting to see something new and be working with the science and the publicity teams.
And how deep have you ever been?
The deepest I've gone is 1 kilometer deep. That's 1,000 meters or over 3,000 feet. And that was in the Bahamas, also in a Triton submersible.
Can you turn around and show everyone the deep ocean again?
Yes.
Because it's all very well saying, oh, I'm just going down, I'm going to follow a nice bit of rocky outcrop down to the bottom and it'll be fine. But actually, a lot of when we drop down is literally just blue. There we go. We'll get away from the rocky outcrop, which...
Yeah, well, there we are. That's what happens when you try to move in the submersible down there. That's what happened to me yesterday when we tried to move. We had a good fixed position, and then we tried to move. And it's very difficult because I'll tell you how they do it. These submersibles send out LED lights, beams, going up to what's called a receiver, a depressor, that sort of hovers above you. So when you move, it causes problems, and that receiver then sends by cable the images that you saw there, the wonderful images, up to the mothership that we're on, and then off by traditional means, by a satellite which just beams it off to you. I just want to ask Lucy Woodall, who's still here, some of those pictures we were seeing of the beautiful corals, just describe what we were seeing there, because that was life. That was a different world, the inhabitants of a different world, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything that lives down there is there because of, you know, the type of light, the temperature, the amount of nutrients in the water, some of them impacted by the other animals that live around them. So each little community we come across is unique. And that's really exciting, and that's really what we're here as scientists to figure out. What lives there, and why do they live there, and then what do they do? How are they impacting on our lives and on the lives of other beings? So the things that we're being able to see are things like the beautiful whip corals, those wonderful white wires going up there.
See them there.
Yeah, exactly. We can see some urchins as well. We can see regular urchins with sort of quite thin spines, and sometimes we see pencil urchins. They're the ones with the thicker spines.
There's a little fish. What do we got there? I've just floored a scientist. I love it.
No, I didn't see it. The light wasn't on.
Sorry.
Also, we've got, coming up here, we've got little bits of coral, we've got some algae, we've got a beautiful fan coral there underneath the outcrop as well.
So these pictures are very useful for you, I assume. In what way do you use these sort of images? In what way do you use the information that you're getting right now from these pictures, where you know, people haven't been before?
Yeah, so it's very important for us to be able to quantify that. What we do is we run the submersibles along a line, which we call a transect, of about 250 meters. And then we watch to see the animals, both the fish and the things living on the seafloor, the benthos, that's our word of the day. And when we see what's there and how that changes, so we measure it multiple times at multiple depths, and then look how that changes from the surface down to depth. So we've seen today some of the animals that are living down deep. Up on the surface, we'll see some of those really iconic corals that you might think of for a coral reef. And actually, as we get down deeper, we're going to see different animals like the ones you saw down at 250 meters, like mostly the urchins and some of the sea cucumbers. To identify and organize these into the zones is really important, because each of these communities are very different. They're connected because they all live in the same water column, but they are actually quite different. So for us to be able to appropriately manage these waters, we need to really understand about them and how they are connected.
Okay, now the school children who were asking those questions, and they were brilliant questions.
Absolutely, yeah.
What would you say to them now if they were watching pictures like this and felt inspired that marine science was something they wanted to get into? What would you say to them, listening to you now, about the work you do and how they could possibly, you know, do something similar one day?
You know, I would say to everyone, even if, you know, marine science isn't your thing, go out there and be curious. Ask questions, try and seek answers, because that's what we did, that's why we're here. We were like, wonder what's there, and then we came out here and looked at it. Of course, it's not quite that easy. There's a lot of preparation, a lot of hard work. We have to be very persistent, but I think it's that curiosity that's really exciting. So there are a lot of programs in and around our coastal areas that are pretty easy to get into. And just going out for a walk on the beach, looking in rock pools, looking at what's around you. If you don't live near the beach, you can look in the park. There's amazing birds and amazing things that live just in our parks, in our cities. So it doesn't exclude anyone. Just go out there, ask questions and be curious.
I've got a question for you. We spend so much money on exploring space where we don't know there is life. And yet we don't spend much money on exploring somewhere where we really do know there is life. Do you think we've got our priorities slightly wrong?
Well, to be fair,
we're going to upset some astronauts now.
So to be fair, we do use some of the technology that's used in space down in the deep sea. Obviously, as a marine biologist, I think there should be loads more spent on the deep sea. And of course, we've seen here today just a snapshot of what can be seen, which is equally as exciting and as inspiring. I think the thing that space had going for them is it was exciting, it captures everyone's imagination. So maybe we've gone from that space race generation, maybe we're in the ocean race now.
Yeah, well look, those are amazing pictures we were just seeing, I have to say. Lucy, thanks very much for the time being. Don't leave us just yet. Let's go back and join Sarah Jane in London.
Questions from here in the studio, because they're taking Lucy's advice. Be curious, ask questions. You can be an oceanographer with those skills when you grow up, or a journalist, or as Mark Austin is proving this morning, you can combine the two skills. Right, who's got a question about tortoises? Here we go. Let's have the mic over here. Are you ready? That is the first shot we've had this morning, and it's on a teacher's head. That was not planned. You've all got detention. You're going to have to stay here for at least another 15 minutes. This is for Thomas Moore, our science correspondent, who's with a tortoise. What's your question?
How long can a tortoise live up to?
Oh, goodness me, that's a really good question. Several decades. I was at the research station here on Aldabra, and there was a huge tortoise called Biscuit, the French word for biscuit, and he had been alive for many, many years, and he was huge, much bigger than the one you can see sleeping under the bush here, and they are quite numerous. They're just everywhere on this island, and there's supposed to be a cave somewhere in the middle. I haven't been there myself, but I've been told by rangers that you can see, and as the heat builds during the day, that there are streams of tortoises going to this cave, and they pile one on top of each other, several layers, just to get into the shade, because it's so much cooler in there than it is out in the tropical heat. But of course, all of them are connected to the sea. This is a coral atoll. everything living on land is connected to the sea, and that's why there is so much concern about the way they're eating the plastic that washes up on the beaches. That is plastic inside tortoise poo. That will have passed all the way through a tortoise, and there have been instances where people see a whole flip-flop inside tortoise poo. Just think about that. Sarah Jane.
Yeah, really disturbing. Thomas, thank you. That poor tortoise trying to have a nap in the afternoon sun, and Thomas Moore comes along with a microphone. Right, we've got a question from Harris for Anna, who's in the submersible. Harris, stand up. Good chest pass. Play netball? No? Oh, you should. You're very good. Harris, what's your question for Anna?
How do you know you had identified a new species or not?
That's a really difficult question when it comes to coral. What we've seen down in the submersibles is people like Randy very carefully take a sample, they take it up to the surface, and then the scientists get it really quickly so it doesn't degrade, and they take it into the laboratories and they put it in ethanol to preserve it. And then what they're going to have to do is actually go back to pictures in museums to try to ascertain exactly what that is. A number of corals have been misidentified. It could be that coral piece they have has never been described before. It could be something new, but it's very, very difficult for something like coral, which is some of the main things we're seeing down here, some of the soft corals. It's very difficult to know. And certainly what the scientists, and Lucy up on deck will be able to tell you this, they're going to take this information back and spend many, many months analysing the pictures that Randy's taking out. All of this is being recorded. Every time we show you a picture, it's being recorded. They'll analyse it frame by frame to see what's down there, and they'll try to work out exactly what they found. And on a previous Nekton mission to Bermuda, they certainly had more than 100 new species, so it's very exciting when that happens. Perhaps, Mark, that's something that Lucy can fill in the gaps for us there.
Yes, so there we are, that's Anna Botting. So mark that, what she just said, out of 10 for us. How did she do?
No, really good. You've obviously been listening to us, Anna. Yeah, so as described there's a lot of processing that goes on, but essentially what we need to do is figure out if what we've seen is different to what has already been described. Now, with our work in the marine realm, a lot of things that we find are new to science, because we really haven't been looking here for very long. So it wouldn't surprise me that if 50, maybe 60% of what we find here is new to science. I don't know, I'm just making a guess. But it is really important for us to document what is here, and actually that's some of Roanne's work. Roanne is looking at the coral collection facility here in Seychelles, and she's going to be performing a collection of the hard corals that are found in Seychelles to act as a baseline for scientists in the future. So this is a really important stuff.
That's right, thank you, Lucy. So yeah, at the University of Seychelles, we're actually set up an archival collection. So we're collecting these small hard corals, just fragments of the main colonies, and then trying to archive them so we have a record. So it's really important to have something to go back to. So know that what we have here, and then also in future to come back to that collection. So it's an inventory almost of all the hard coral species that we have here.
So these samples that you take here, do they stay here or do they go back to the UK? What happens to the samples?
So for the hard corals, they will be staying here in Seychelles. Yeah. So we are housing them at the University of Seychelles for now, and we will be trying to grow that collection as much as we can over the next few years.
Okay. All right. Well, let's hand back to London and get a little bit more from the children there.
Yeah, the children are standing by with more questions, Mark. Well, I've got Dr. Simon Boxall, oceanographer, and Emily Penn, who's been with us all morning, our Sky Ocean ambassador. Simon, it's interesting watching Anna down in that submersible, and one of the children asked a really good question earlier on. She asked her to describe the ocean in 3 words. In fact, everyone who's out in the Seychelles do it. And one of the words that kept coming up was vast. It's so big, but put it into perspective for us, because what Anna's looking at looks vast, but actually it's only a tiny portion of that area.
If you divided the ocean up, so every person on the planet, over 7 billion people, had their 2-metre deep swimming pool, then every person on the planet would own 93 square kilometres of ocean. So that's enormous. You wouldn't see your nearest neighbour. Obviously, you want to get in early, so the real estate at the surface in the Seychelles is worth more than the deep stuff. But actually, they're going down 100 metres, 120 metres. That's less than about 3% of the average depth of the ocean. And it's about 1/10 it's about 1% of the deepest part of the ocean. So, you know, we really are looking at the surface skin. If you'd asked a marine biologist 50 years ago what exists in the deep ocean, they say not a lot. Today we know even the deep ocean is teeming with life, and it's an amazing place.
Yeah, Emily, why is it so important for projects like Deep Ocean Live to go down as far as we can and explore?
I think for me, having spent 10 years at sea exploring our ocean, the thing that was so key for me was actually falling in love with our blue planet, being completely mesmerized by understanding the science of why it was so important, but also just the feeling that it gives. And this exploration is so important because, you know, we're showing a part of the world that's never been discovered before, but hopefully we're also getting people to fall in love with it because you really only care for the things that you love and you only love the things that you really know.
Yeah, well, I think testament to that is Anna Botting, who's down in the sub with our aquanaut, Randy. I'm not sure if she's going to come back. She's really fallen in love with the ocean. Emily, I know you've got a question for Anna down there in the sub.
I do. I mean, we've had so many great questions already. I can't top those. But what I'm wondering is, you know, what could you do that's going to top this? You've explored a place of the planet that really so few people have ever had the chance to do. So, I mean, what's left from here?
Well, go deeper or go higher. So well, let's do one at the top of Everest or something like that, shall we? That's a really good question, because I just want to, at this point, give a shout out to everyone who's made this possible. Not only the pilots, Randy and Robert, who've helped us, all the surface team, everybody at Nekton, who's been absolutely amazing, the people who invented the BlueCom system we're using, and we're drifting underneath the plate with a question there, but also our engineers at Sky. It's taken a year to plan. If you work out that most of the marine documentaries you watch on television take 4 to 5 years to make, we're trying to show you something in an hour or an hour and a half as it is today. It's very, very difficult. The technology is bonkers in many respects, and so I think for now this is enough that it's worked at all. Even when we came on air on Monday morning, we weren't 100% sure it was going to work like this. So it's been an extraordinary experience, but I do want to say thank you to everybody who's made it possible.
Yeah, I'll echo that, Anna. It's been an incredible 3 days. Simon, Emily, thank you for the moment. I just want to go back to Thomas Moore, who's on the beach, some 200 metres above where Anna is. And Thomas, we've been exploring the worst offenders when it comes to plastic pollution on beaches. And we always think of plastic straws, plastic bottles, lighters. But flip-flops, we've discovered, are on that list as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been all over the world for ocean rescue, as you know, over the last 2.5 years, and I've seen an awful lot of plastic, but I've never seen so many flip-flops in one place. See, we reckon this pile that we're sitting on, about 800 flip-flops, and they were cleared from 3 beaches, no more than 50 metres in length. And these are beaches where green turtles come up to nest. They're having to wade through that plastic. And yesterday, as I arrived on the beach, we saw hatchlings making their way down to the sea. And fortunately, there was no plastic in the way. But just imagine what this pile would mean to a turtle hatchling. It would almost certainly mean a barrier that meant death. Awful. So, Lindsay Turnbull. Lindsay is a professor at Oxford University and also a trustee of Seychelles Islands Foundation, the organisation that runs Aldabra. What do you think when you come here and you see so many flip-flops?
Well, it breaks my heart, frankly. You know, this is such an incredible place and so pristine in every way, been so heavily protected. People have worked so hard to do that, and to find the world's rubbish just drifting onto its shores is truly mind-boggling.
But your volunteers have done amazing work over the past few weeks, particularly carrying up the south coast, where there's many, many more flip-flops, but also more turtles nesting, which is why you've focused your attention there. Whatever you do, though, it's only scratching the surface, because you know that the next tide will bring in yet more plastic, yet more flip-flops. So what is the long-term solution?
Well, the long-term solution, we have to turn off the tap. Somehow we have to do that, and that's beyond the scope of this particular project, but we know for sure that this cannot stay here. So we still consider that it's been very worthwhile to get this stuff off here, but yes, we're hoping to use this to motivate the rest of the world to solve this problem in a much more sensible way.
And you're trying to get this plastic into something that you could do, some legacy of this mission, something that you could really show to people that this is not on, that you need to do something about this. As you say, turn off the tap. That is this the long-term solution? The message from Aldabra is that it is a victim of geography. It may be isolated, but not isolated enough from the global mismanagement of plastic. Back to you.
OK, Thomas, thank you. Well, it's been an incredible 3 days here as part of Deep Ocean Live. And it really is groundbreaking stuff. Mark Austin is now with the man behind this incredible mission.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sarah Jane. Oliver Steeds is here. What did you make, first of all, of the questions that were asked and the way the children, they seem so enthusiastic about it? And I think your children were watching it all from the studio, weren't they?
Yeah, my girls were, and I saw a couple of pictures of them and they were very happy. I nearly had a tear in my eye when I saw them again, because, yeah, we're at sea for 7 weeks undertaking this mission. But it's been, yeah, it's been a great show. Congratulations to Sky for pulling this all together. And hopefully it's had some impact. It's given me an idea for what we need to do next. So I like your commitment to this. Which is next time we need to have young people and kids in the subs talking to other young people. Yeah. Young people talking to young people about that experience, I think, could be even more transformative. And let's try and do that next time.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point because we've been down, Anna's down at the moment, we've been down, and it's a very rare thing to get to see I mean, we were the first people, you know, to see this stuff. It's extraordinary. How soon do you think it will be a more common, a more routine thing, and that children can go down and see that?
I hope, you know, I hope that there will be more opportunities. We know just how expensive it is to launch a mission like this. We're a small charity. We've been able to pull it off. But you look at who else does it. It's governments, it's military, it's big research institutes around the world, and it's offshore, oil and gas. So it is costly, but I think, yeah, we've got to look at how much is being spent in outer space and look at the critical needs to explore inner space, our ocean, and see actually, yeah, where should we be putting the investment? And I think more of it should be coming here into the deep sea.
Right, now we've been, you know, on the boat about a week where our programs are almost done. When we leave, you'll breathe a huge sigh of relief, no doubt, but also you'll get down to the real business. So just tell us, what is that business? What do you get down to when we've gone? What is the mission for you?
So we will be continuing our research operations, and that is a mix of different activities. We use our submersibles for survey work to take those video transects that you've seen down there, but also for sampling. And then we have an ROV that goes even deeper as well. So that goes down 300, 500 meters. We've got an incredible survey boat with our partners from Bibi and Teledyne Marine. So with that, we're able to go and cover the seabed and start to map the seabed, take more and more samples, continue it, so we can create this baseline of how the ocean's changing here around Seychelles.
Okay, Oliver, thanks very much indeed. Our time is nearly up, so let's go back from here in the Indian Ocean. Beautiful day, beautiful sight of Aldabra. Let's go back to you in London.
Mark, thank you very much. Well, there you go. The man behind this groundbreaking mission wants to put children in the sub for his next mission. Who's volunteering? Yeah, few volunteers will pass on your names. That is the next mission here on Deep Ocean Live. Thank you very much for your questions. They've done a grand job today. I'm going to hand to Anna for one final time before we bring her up to the surface. Anna.
Thank you very much indeed. And actually I can see, weirdly, the outline of the ship right above us. The ship's captain has to keep exactly above us, or this doesn't work. The crew have done an extraordinary job doing that. But we've been on a mission with Nekton. 5 to 500 meters is the deep exploration they want to do. It's been an extraordinary experience, I have to say, to do this, with the help of people like Randy, to see all the little, today for me it's been the urchins, I have to say, to see the little urchins who are clinging on. They can move. It's amazing, isn't it, what they can do? But I think Deep Ocean Live perhaps has lifted a lid on a world that we cannot see. This is a world that is alien to humanity, and the problem is out of sight, out of oversight, and it doesn't perhaps get the care that it needs. It doesn't get the marine protection areas, and certainly the Seychelles government has done an amazing job trying to protect areas like this, areas that are pristine. One last look at the cliff face that rolls up to Aldabra Atoll. It rolls up to that extraordinary environment there with the giant tortoises and the turtles and the robber crabs all fighting for life, everybody fighting for a chance to survive. And the problem, of course, of global warming is that corals, like we have seen, the corals also up further, higher up in the sunlight area, they're really under threat, and perhaps now we need to just take a step towards trying to protect them and all of the sea creatures here. So from all of us, from you,
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Goodbye. It's an extraordinary place to be, I have to say.
It's amazing. I just can't believe that we're seeing you and hearing you like this.
I've broadcast from some pretty remote and amazing places in my time, but none quite so remote or amazing as this.